Welcome to How Government Works, an educational program sponsored by Philly Neighborhood Networks. I'm your host, Victoria Alfred Laveau. Today, we will be talking with City Controller Christy Brady about her work and how it affects residents of our city. The Controller is the watchdog for how our city's tax dollars are spent. The office is responsible for conducting independent audits of the city's finances and for ensuring that the city government is both efficient and accountable to the people of Philadelphia. The controller is also responsible for investigating allegations of fraud and mismanagement, conducting independent audits of the city's finances, and the controller also serves on the Board of Pensions, Gas Commission, and the Sinking Fund Commission. So the person who holds this office is a major player in how our government works. Today, we're joined by our city controller, Christy Brady, to talk about her work. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here on the road and everything. Clearly your job is very busy, so we're going to try and keep it efficient, and I'm excited to learn more about what you do. So yeah, first question, what does a city controller do? Is it different in Philadelphia than in other cities?
Thank you for the question. As you stated, City Controller serves as the chief auditor of the city and the school district of Philadelphia. We're responsible for overseeing both entities' financial operations, conducting audits, ensuring public funds are used efficiently and effectively. Now, while the core responsibilities of city controllers are similar across municipalities, the specific duties maybe and the degree of independence could be slightly different. We in the city of Philadelphia issue an opinion on the city and the school district's financial statements, all the grant money that comes into the city and the school district. That's called the single audit. Not many municipalities still have that ability, but our office is an office of our audit division has about 30% of the staff are CPAs, and that gives us the ability to be able to issue these opinions on these financial documents. Also, as you mentioned, I serve on the city's pension board, the Gas Commission, and the Sinking Fund Commission.
Wow, that is a lot. Um, and you mentioned that you have these audit teams and that there are a lot of different parts, working parts together that go with watching over the school district and the city itself. Could you walk me what a typical day in the life is for you?
Absolutely. So I would say it definitely varies, but it could include reviewing and analyzing financial reports and the audit findings that are coming in from our audits, meeting with deputies and directors of the audit division, the investigative division, and finance and policy division to discuss ongoing projects and investigations. It could be communicating and collaborating with other city officials and departments. And this is one of the things that we would do is because they want an independent analysis of financial policies within the city. We also could be engaging with the public and media to communicate our findings and promote transparency within city government. And also just overseeing the operations of the various divisions in the controller's office, including pre-audit, audit, investigations, finance, and our finance and policy divisions. So, and also preparing to, when I serve on the board of pensions and the Gas Commission and Sinking Fund Commission, there's a lot of preparation that goes in before the actual board meetings.
Yeah, of course. I'm sure
I was
those meetings
I'm thinking of that, yeah,
are pretty long.
that's a typical, that any of those things could happen in a day.
Yeah, the
Yes.
agenda is always moving, but it sounds like it can include interfacing with a lot of different city officials and members of the media and Philadelphia public itself. Um, So we've heard the word independent come up a few times, and this was something I was interested in right when I learned that we were going to be interviewing you. What does it mean to be an independent auditor or analyst and also be a part of the city government?
I love this question because yes, my paycheck comes from the city of Philadelphia. But in Philadelphia, the city controller is an independently elected official, separate from the mayor and city council, and I am tasked with auditing their operations. I am normally elected on a separate cycle from the other elected officials whose affairs I do audit. And in addition, my budget is protected by the city charter. So this independence that I have is designed to promote an unbiased oversight of city government and to ensure that our audits and evaluations are conducted without external interference, which promotes transparency and accountability in government operations.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm sure you get that question a lot from different people as you show up at events. Like, so how do we know that we can
Yes.
trust you? And there are a number of different safeguards that are built in to make sure that you can do your job and that people can trust you. Um, so let's get into some of the specifics of your day to day a little bit more. You mentioned some of your audit and investigative teams and that there are a number of CPAs on the job. Um, what are some of your most memorable investigations when you think about like your best stories that come from working at this job so far? What do you think of?
Some of the most memorable investigations, I would say there's two that pop up in my mind right away. And one is not something that I did when I was as controller. It was actually while I was working as an audit director in the office. I was in charge of the audit of the fire department's brownouts and firefighter rotation policies. And the reason why this particular audit was so memorable is the way I saw government is supposed to work. In that audit, the city controller and the mayor worked together to implement the recommendations from the findings found in that audit. And it, it's just the way government is supposed to work. Another is our most recent investigation of the city's homestead exemption program, where we identified millions of dollars lost through property tax fraud.
Wow. Um, what were some aspects of that investigation that you found so memorable?
Uh, because it came from initially, so we have a lot of community outreach. We have a community affairs division that goes out throughout the city, um, uh, who go to civic meetings and other events and provide feedback for our office, and it could help us identify where we should look in an audit. And in this particular case, this was a gentleman who lived in the lower northeast area of the city. He's a 92-year-old Navy vet, and he discovered OPA's website and started to look at who was receiving the homestead exemption. And on the website, there's the home itself and then a mailing address. And he started to look into some of these homes and thought that they may be inappropriately taking the homestead exemption. And he wrote letters to various city departments. And finally, one of those letters came to our office, and our investigators looked at into the list of properties that he provided us and found that he was 100% correct. And we took those properties and we added to go across the city and found that people were inappropriately taking the city's homestead exemption. Whether this is a program that allows a person that lives in their home to take $100,000 off the value of their home, and you receive up to $1,400 in property tax relief in your real estate taxes. And we found that there were people taking multiple exemptions, people that didn't live in that home, people that were renting the home. There were businesses taking the exemption, and we found conservatively that the city is missing out on $11.4 million a year in property taxes. And this is lost tax revenue and money that should be going to both the city and the school district.
Oh, wow, that's incredible. And it all came from just one person in Philadelphia who was like, this seems messed up. Let me write to my city officials about it. It's nice to know that that actually works.
Yes, absolutely. I love getting these tips. That's why I go out to the community or groups and just getting out in public and hearing um, their concerns and getting a lot of feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, with previously you mentioned that it's not just the city of Philadelphia and government that you look into, but also, and also very importantly, the school district of Philadelphia, you're auditing them as well. Are there any particular audits or investigations in the school district of Philadelphia that have been really important to you?
Yes, actually there is.
You're like, there's
Uh,
so many. How do I pick?
yeah, well, one is when uh Paul Vallis was superintendent at the time, and he came into the schools during their winter break and took all of the artwork out of all of the schools within the school district of Philadelphia. And when he never alerted the principals or anyone in the school. So when they came back from winter break, they thought they were robbed. And what we found out was something that he did similarly, I believe in Chicago. He took those pieces of art in the other city that he came from and sold them. And his intention was to sell them to plug a budget deficit in the school district. And we went in and did a special report. We actually we they had to disclose the location of the artwork so we can make sure that it wasn't sold. And in the end, we accounted for all the pieces of art that he took out of those schools, and it never got sold.
Mm,
So now there was a win sort of a win-loss situation. The artwork never got back into the schools, but
mm,
he also didn't sell them. But then this artwork does get put into, they'll borrow the artwork and put it in the art museum or various museums that want to take it out of the storage. And it is in protected storage because some of the art actually needed to be in temperature controlled environments because they were that valuable.
mhm. Wow, the more I hear about your office, the more I think of y'all as like a team of detectives that are just doing your best to solve whatever mysteries come your way.
It
Um,
could be like that, and that's what makes it exciting.
yeah, you never know what you're gonna get on the tip line or from, whatever the city throws your
Exactly.
way. You can never
Exactly.
tell. But of course, one
Exactly.
of the important things that your office does, in addition to making these investigations, is actually implementing those recommendations and turning what you find and what you're working on into a reality and into a change for the city of Philadelphia. How does that actually work?
That's that's a very good question because throughout my years I've worked in a controller's office for over 30 years now. I started as an auditor trainee and I worked my way up through the ranks until I was deputy controller of audit. And then when the former controller resigned to run for mayor, I was appointed acting controller, eventually resigned to run and won the position in 2023. Um, uh, so throughout my years of auditing, we take a lot of uh, continuing education classes. And part of what we learn and part of the struggle of being an auditor is having management implement your recommendations. But what I have found is communication is so key when we do an audit. So there is no surprise attack of I'm not trying to, my goal is to have a department implement our recommendations and not to just issue a report and get my name out there. Success to me is being able to get management to implement our recommendations.
Hmm. So when it sounds like that can be pretty difficult sometimes, and you don't want to surprise anyone, you do want to let them know, like, we're looking into your department. Um, at the end of the day, if you're, looking into an audit versus an investigation, are those different processes when it comes to actually implementing your recommendations?
And has a lot of rules and regulations. When we perform an audit, we're performing an audit in accordance with um, generally accepted auditing standards and government auditing standards issued by the Comptroller of the United States. So there are the opinion audits that we do are it has to be signed by a CPA. With an investigation, it's more of a more immediate um um it can respond a little bit more quickly to the needs of the city. So for example, our investigative unit issued a report on imminently dangerous properties in the city. So while I was running back in 2023, there was a few building collapses that happened within the city. So when I came into office, I wanted to look into imminently dangerous properties, why these properties were were collapsing, and that was more of an investigation. So it's a more um, it's something that we can issue a little bit faster than an audit, but they're very similar.
Hmm. What ended up happening with those imminently dangerous buildings? I don't know if I heard about that particular report, and that concerns me as someone who walks around in the city.
Well, what we found was that uh, if a building is deemed imminently dangerous, it's supposed to be um, uh, torn down within 24 hours. So they actually do like a curbside bid, and someone bids and they tear it down. But what we found was that L&I's Eclipse system, this is their software that houses information about permits, licenses, inspections, and um, properties that are coded as ID, imminently dangerous. There are also properties that are unsafe, and that's a different category. But because this was a off the shelf type of system that was bought, it's not really labeling the properties properly. There were properties listed on the system that were still imminently dangerous, but might have been already torn down, or they might not have been imminently dangerous that needed to be torn down within 24 hours. They were deemed unsafe where you would put a fence around them, and then and the homeowner would have the ability to rectify the situation before further action would be taken from L&I. And so because of lack of resources within L&I, uh, it was hard for them to keep up with these lists of properties. And as a result of our investigation, L&I is making some changes within their processes uh, so they can respond more quickly to uh, a property that's deemed imminently dangerous.
Hmm. Well, that sounds like a good thing for everyone.
Yes,
It
yeah,
also kind of,
absolutely.
yeah,
Mhm.
it kind of highlights something interesting, which is that when you're looking into cases where you're trying to protect everyone in the city, sometimes the situation is not coming about because of fraud or malice, but sometimes simply because of a lack of resources or difficulty in systems. It's not always a case of like you're searching down a bad guy or whatever. Sometimes it's just like we can fix these systems, they can be better, and here's a report telling you how it could be. So,
Yes, and that's why I think it's very important that the department knows that we want to work with them and improve the processes and not because it is difficult when you come into a department and you're the auditor. You're not the most well-liked person in the room.
No. Yeah, everyone's like, "Oh man, like she's gonna find something out that is embarrassing to us or that's frustrating," but you want to assure everyone that like, yes, that's my job, but also my job is to make things better for everyone. I'm not out here to like fire y'all or make everything worse. You're trying to make things better.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Um, I had this one question just because I'm learning so much about the controller's office now. I'm really glad that it does exist. But what do you think that Philadelphia would be like if the city's controller's office disappeared tomorrow? What would we be missing out on?
I think the the assuredness of the independence. Our staff are civil service. The majority of my staff are civil service, and they they believe in what they do helps the city, helps the taxpayers of the city, and um, having that check and balance. There's a lot of things that come through our office that um, you need that function to be there for the checks and balances to make sure that the city um, is spending their money as efficiently and effectively as possible, that they're using their resources as efficiently and effectively as possible. So, and I believe in in transparency and to not have that check and balance in place. It's not to say that something bad is going to happen tomorrow, but
Mm.
um, people perform better knowing that those checks and balances are there.
Absolutely. Um, for you personally, do you have a pet project or a favorite thing that you're working on right now?
Um, what we're working on right now, we're in the middle of a performance audit on L&I. We're looking at their processes because there's money lost in the city for using workers in construction projects that may not be classified, and therefore the city is not getting tax revenue from their pay. They're paying them under the table. We want to make sure that people are working on buildings that are, if you're hiring a plumber, that they're properly licensed. We want to make sure contractors are properly licensed and are performing the work in accordance with the permit that they applied for. One of the other things that I do, all right, one of my favorite projects when before I became controller, uh, on our website, you can sign up for a monthly newsletter. And so back when I was a deputy, I put my name in and I never got anything. And when I became controller, I said, what happened to my email? Well, like, is there a newsletter that comes out? Like, what are we doing here? And as it turns out, that uh, emails were being collected, but there was no newsletter. So one of the first things that I did was create a monthly newsletter called Municipal Money Matters, and it gives the reader, it's once a month, and it gives the reader information about the financial affairs of the city or something, a project our office is doing. And you can sign up for it on our website at controller.phila.gov. And it's something I'm very proud of. It's called Municipal Money Matters.
That's awesome. I know what I'm doing after I hang up from here. That's going to be a good
Excellent.
email for me to have. Um,
Yes.
we're coming up close to the end of our program.
Okay.
Not quite there yet. We still got a few questions left. One thing I was wondering is, do you have the resources to do the job you need to do? Do you ever feel like there's anything that's missing or anything that's frustrating about the resources that you have versus the job that you're being asked to do?
I would always take more resources if I could. More resources just means more audits that I can do. But I don't this my budget is protected by the charter. So um uh this the city cannot reduce my budget.
Hmm.
I my budget is protected to be able to do the ability to be that financial watchdog of the city. So, but I would always accept a larger budget.
Yeah, personally, if I was out here like just floating some money to city officials and everything, I'm sure I'd be a very popular person. But I'm glad that we have that protected aspect in the charter so that at least they can't give you any less. Um, is
Right.
there, so you mentioned that you were elected and you were running in 2023. Is there anything in particular you are excited to work on or achieve in the rest of your term?
Well, this is so since it was a special election, it was only for 2 years. It's normally a 4-year term. So actually I'm running again this year.
Oh my God.
But yes, but one of the things I'm looking forward to, I want to look into the contracting practices with the city. I believe that it's too slow, and I'd like to look at to see if we can make it more efficient. I also want to look closer into the rebuild program.
Hmm. The rebuild program in what way?
Oh, so one of the things going around to all the different areas of the city, I was at a community meeting where a keynote speaker was talking about rebuild and not in a positive way. So I invited this person back into the office and to have her tell me why. Like, I wanted to hear her side of the story. And it's what I'm finding is that they're closing down rec centers well before they break ground, and it could be
Mhm.
over a year, sometimes 2 years. And these are programs that are for our youth. And I believe in the programs of our rec centers. I think it gives our youth um, uh, something to do to keep them off the streets, whether if it's sports or arts and crafts or a computer program or dance class. I just think that I absolutely love the programs in our Parks and Rec, and I think it's very important to keep them running. And I want to look also into the money that we're putting into rebuild, and are we spending it efficiently and effectively? Because we're collecting a lot of money with the soda tax, and the city's issuing bonds to uh, improve our parks and recs and libraries, but they're not spending all of the money that they've issued in bonds to improve our parks and recs.
Hmm. That's so good to know. I didn't know that about the rec centers and their really important programs. Thank you so much for
Yes.
spending your time with us for the past 25 minutes at Philly Neighborhood Networks. We really appreciate it. Um, and
You
just
too. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh my God, thank you so much for coming. I'm looking forward to signing up for your newsletter and learning more about how municipal money is working out. Thank you for sharing your insights about this office. We hope that our viewers have learned something new and useful on today's program. I'm your host, Victoria Alfred Laveau. We'll see you next time on our ongoing educational series, How Government Works. Thanks for joining us.